I am not a business person. I haven't gotten an MBA. I'm not someone who works in marketing. And sometimes you all can use interesting words that I would like some clarity on. So the two, reimagine and then reinvent, from the press release, were two words that stood out to me. I'm just wondering if you wanted to provide clarity for supporters who see that and then wonder what that means as far as a rebrand or a retool would look like.
Totally. So I'd love to talk about the actual words in their meaning, but I also want to be really clear. I want to tell you all of the things in terms of where we are transparently. Like, let's dive into the different components that people are going to care about, because that's the whole point of this, is to be transparent. Okay, so starting high level, when we talk about from a brand standpoint, what we're trying to do, and when I say brand, I don't just mean like the creative components of this. I mean as the Rapids brand. When you hear a word like reimagine, it's really to address the entire system. And I'm also not a creative person, but I've learned a lot of words during this process. And brand system is something that comes up a lot. And that's not just what your colors are and what your name is and how you present visually. It's also about the systematic choices that are made to represent not just the nomenclature of internal rhetoric that we have for how we perceive ourselves, but on a higher level, who we are, who the Rapids stand for. And that's something that came through really loud, both from my staff. The staff say this a lot. They want to know who we are and what we stand for. But in a lot of these fan surveys that we sent out, and fan focus groups that we held over the course of the last few months. And so that narrative, the who we are, is the first component of reimagination. We need to take a really hard look in the mirror of who we are and figure out what's important to us so that we can articulate that then visually as well. So when we talk about reimagining, it's the entire thing. We're reimagining the entire purpose of Rapids, the meaning of what that means, both from a narrative standpoint internally to guide decision-making matrices, as well as how that then is represented visually. So I'm actually going to pause there. Are there questions you have on that one?
No, I think that makes sense, and that's in line with the conversation we would have had back in December.
Yeah. Now, when we talk about like the specifics of what that looks like, I think about it in four ways. So one is the narrative, and then the other three are the visual components. And I think the biggest parts of that, when you talk about not necessarily a reinvention, but like a refinement of who we are visually, it's the name, the colors, and the crest. That's what people care about. And that's what we care about just diving into. So from a narrative standpoint, like, we're going to be doing a lot of work to really refine what that narrative is. What do we care about, and how does that come through then visually? So like from a Rapid standpoint, it's like, what does that mean? Does it mean forward movement? Does it mean relentlessness? Does it mean pressure and test of time? And what are those words that really help drive the narrative of the brand? Then let's dive into the big three. So names. I'm happy to report we're not changing our name. We are and will continue to remain the Colorado Rapids. And that's something that came through very strong, really strong in all of the fan research that we did. Around 90% of the fans said don't change the name. And so we're not going to touch it. And I actually am really happy, because I've talked a lot about this in the past, but I love that we're one of the few that keep the name of the state or region in the name. And I think that's really important. We are the Colorado Rapids. We serve more than just the city. We serve the Rocky Mountain region, and that's represented in our name and part of our history, and we love that.
I agree.
The next piece, yeah, right, aligned, hands in. So we are keeping the name the same. The next is the colors, and I'm also happy to report that you're not going to have to change the name of your website, because burgundy is a part of our core identity. It's a part of our thread of who we are from a visual standpoint, and it came through very clear as well in the fan research and focus groups that is a core component of our identity. And so I'm happy to report that the Burgundy Boys are going to remain the Burgundy Boys. However, there will be optimizing of the color palette, and what that means, just to provide, again, more clarity, is that we just want to sharpen some of the colors to bring it up and update it for the HDH, if you will. So there will be slight tweaks you may see for that, but Burgundy is Burgundy, and we will remain the Burgundy Boys. And then finally, as it relates to the crest, so there will be a reimagination of the crest. And what I mean by that is it's going to look very different. I can't tell you what it's going to look like right now because honestly, I only just saw the first few initial sketches earlier last week, and we said back to the drawing board. So there's no news to report in terms of what that's going to look like. Cause that's not for us to decide. We help guide the direction, and the fans are going to be very involved with how that is tweaked, and it represents them. And there's going to be a lot of work that's done over the next few months to work on that together. For the fans and with the fans. But one of the things that was really interesting to me, and I was actually floored, so I come from the consumer research space, and very rarely do you get large majorities of people saying, yes, I want change, right? Like, change is hard. Change in regular life is hard. Change when you're talking about something that is emotional with like the brand representation of something you love from a sports standpoint, very difficult. 55% of our fans said that they were open to a Crest reimagination or Crest update. And to provide context there, that's 30% higher than other sports team averages when they ask similar questions like that, which that floors me. Like, having a fan base that open to something as large of a Crest being reimagined, that's massive. And it speaks volumes to what we talked about in December around there being a disconnect between how we activate and how we represent the fan base as well as the community of Colorado and Rocky Mountain region. And one of the things that also came through in the survey that I wasn't surprised by, because I feel very aligned with this, is that even our most core fans who love the brand, who've been with the brand, who know the brand, when you look at our logo compared to all the other Crests in MLS, it takes a minute to find it. Right? Even when I'm looking at league reports, I'm like, okay, where are we? Like, it takes me a second to find the Rapids logo, and that's problematic. We need to make sure that we're representing this region and it's not forgotten, and we hear the phrase forgotten franchise a lot, and it's easy to gloss over a logo that doesn't necessarily represent what this region is and stands for, and it's something reflective from a personal vantage. So that's going to be one that looks very different. I don't know how different that's going to look or what it's going to be comprised of, because we're going to work on that together as a group over the next few months to a year. So that is the full swath of all the things. I talked a lot. Questions?
5,000 fans responding. I remember when we spoke, and I think you jokingly said you want to hear from people who hate the Rapids in case there are people out there. I mean, were you I don't know what the survey response looked like in 2023, but I mean, were you happy with the number of people, the variety of input, not just the what yes or no questions people were responding to say, yes, Reimagine, yes, Colorado Rapids name?
Man, I'm so glad you asked this question. I can't believe I didn't hit on this. One, yes, I was floored by the number of respondents, but even more so in the diversity in response. And when I say that, I do obviously mean socioeconomic and actual diversity, but there was generational diversity. There was diversity in terms of how what the relationship to the club has been. So whether it's newer fans or our most tenured fans, it was a hugely vast spectrum of people that we engaged with. And the thing that stood out for me the most is that you have gaps that large in whatever the different categories you're measuring. You're expecting to have large gaps in terms of the responses. So for the responses to be as aligned as they were with the diversity and generations as well as those other components, it was jarring. Like, you don't get that in research often, which again is like a stark signal for me that this is something that's needed. Now, a full rebrand? No, that's not what this is, because we're not looking at name, we're not adjusting initial brand colors, right, and the core brand colors. But there was something that was needed visually to be adjusted based on the change in the responses that we were seeing from fans.
Timeline-wise, what does that look like, or what can you share right now?
Yeah, so from a timeline standpoint, truthfully, we're working through when this could be launched from a timing for like actual showing publicly all of the marks. We're working on that with Adidas as well, because a lot of this is aligned to when we can get the Crest on some of the jerseys and other assets that the team will wear, aligning that with buying timelines for Adidas. Like we mentioned last time, they're long runways, so we're trying to figure out what that looks like, especially the moving target of next year shifting. to a two-season, essentially like a two-season schedule with the MLS schedule changes. So that it's kind of up in the air in terms of when this would be rolled out, like for the full launch. But what fans and supporters can expect is that over the next few months, we're starting to do a lot more polling in terms of visual marks and getting feedback on what the initial marks look like and colors and I'm thinking, think about it like Pinterest mood boards, like what do we align with, what do we not align with, to really dive in and refine and hone in the new direction for the Crest.
Okay. What does fan input, fan involvement look like this, other than maybe a few people from C38 being told to read an NDA thoroughly before signing?
I think it'll be more so like open forum. So I'm leaning a lot on different clubs who've done this very well. NYCFC and Seattle are two that stand out. And if you look through kind of how they launched, there's websites that continue to give you updates in terms of the initial marks and directions. It's making sure that there are forums for fans to come and engage in, like even think about it like a gallery walk where you have different keyboards set up where people can poke and prod at different elements that they align with or they don't align with again, rapid staff and some of our vendors helping support and document those reactions. But that's generally what it's going to look like. It's not a small number of people that are engaged in this. It's going to be a larger group of our fan base because we want to make sure that it is representative of our fans, and not just a few.
Have you gotten any initial feedback about the small vendors? I know we've only had, 2 home games, but I mean, what's that look like or what more are you looking at? What's the next low-hanging fruit, say, this season from a fan experience, in-stadium experience?
Ooh, merch, 100%.
Okay.
I think that's something that you're going to see a lot of changes in after the World Cup break. One of the segments of people who are generally underrepresented from a merch standpoint are women. And so we're taking a hard look at what their options are. We started doing it with youth in the beginning of the season, but there's going to be probably a larger swath for them as well. So merchandise is big. F&B, we still need to add more from a local standpoint, but that'll probably be 2027 because we have our vendor stack set up for this year. And we're going to continue to refine the in-game presentation component. So everything from music to pyro to the things that happen during halftime and pregame. We spent a lot of time in the beginning of this off season thinking through the show in general, and there's been a lot of really positive reaction to the changes that we've made. One of the things that we heard, and I mentioned this in our fan forum that we hosted before our home opener, is that while we get a lot of credit for atmosphere, and atmosphere meaning like the area, right? So parking's free, generally pretty cheap to get into DSGP. One of the things we don't get a lot of credit for, because there wasn't a lot of it before, is energy. So like you have this good atmosphere, positive affiliation with coming to Dick's Sporting Goods, maybe not commuting in, but coming to Dick's Sporting Goods. But then you get into the stadium and it was kind of like womp womp. But we've spent a lot of time around the energy and how do we help manufacture energy? How do we help create moments? How do we add traditions that are visible for new fans coming in? Because that's really important for a lot of people trying to find their forever team. And that's not just young kids who are entering the sport or coming to Colorado for the first time trying to find their forever team. It's also younger individuals who are finding soccer for the first time, who want to really lean into a new team, which is going to be huge for the World Cup being hosted, the Men's World Cup being hosted here this summer. There's going to be a lot more eyes on soccer and in people who want to engage with the sport locally, both young people and mid-range age people. So we need to make sure that we're providing an energetic environment that it's fun to come to and people want to come back, not just because the team performed well or poorly, but because the atmosphere and environment was exciting.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot that we do over the course of the year to make sure that we're refining that experience and we lean into what works and we move away from what doesn't, because there's been some L's, but it's okay. You live and you learn. You hear from the post-game feedback, which is nice.
Yeah, I want to go back to when you mentioned how I pulled up a picture that had all of the MLS crests when you mentioned that it's kind of hard to find the Rapids crest. I guess I'm not going to say that I disagree with you, but normally, at least on the stuff that I see the league has, it's listed alphabetically. So the C's are pretty easy to find. If nothing else, Columbus has a giant C in their crest, so then I can usually find the Rapids one. But I would agree that I would say from a branding standpoint, says a guy who's got almost 80 soccer kits in his closet, that for the most part, the ones that crush it are either intricate and detailed and have all of the little Easter eggs, or ones that are very, very simple. So you mentioned Seattle and New York City FC. So NYCFC, it's supposed to mimic the old school token that they had for using the subway. And I don't have the thing that they had when they launched a decade ago, but I'm sure there's some graphic that they put out that has 20 little tidbits that the detail nerds are really going to like those Easter eggs. I look at Seattle's recent, we'll call it a reimagination, a refresh that still is keeping that Sounders look, but more of a simplified down look. I look similarly to what Arsenal's done, for example, which, say what you will about the last couple of cup games that they've played, have done well from a branding standpoint. And I think there's an argument that just the silhouette of the cannon is iconic, is easy to point out a bunch of months, among a bunch of other Premier League or just English football crests as well, and is incredibly them. So I look at it, you could say, so I see a few, not that I'm telling you what to do here, or your team what to do here, but I think there's either they refresh and do something new that's creative and intricate in details. There's a more simplified version that is maybe of the same ilk as the C with the soccer ball in the middle of it, like the flag. And then there could be something that could be a mashup between them, maybe bringing in some of the retro looks that we saw last year as well. How do you, as someone relatively new to the club, think about this critical decision in terms of what it would mean for the longevity and what the Rapids stand for? And how do you kind of consider those different choose your own adventures that could all have very different outcomes, but still be a fun result in the end?
I think as a newbie, it's been really fun for me, this initial process, to dive in separately from the work that the brand team is doing on this, to learn more about soccer crest culture, right? Because to your point, there is for the MLS teams that have rebranded, reimagined, refined, reworked, whatever, add in all your but there's those that you can think about, the simplified, cartoonized, is something that's come out, that word's come out a lot when we look at MLS, but then you look at the EPL and there's more storytelling. There's a lot. This could go in a lot of the directions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, I want to double down on, this is not a decision that we are going to be making. This is a decision that our fans are going to be making with us. So I have no idea the direction it's going to go. But what I can tell you is that I actually wrote this down because I'm going to use this. I'm going to review, Matt, that incredibly them, whatever we do is going to be incredibly us. When I say us, I mean incredibly Colorado and incredibly Rapids, because that's what's missing right now. If you look at our crest, fans say, if you look at our crest, there's nothing that you see there that's like Colorado outside of the word Colorado being large, but again on the center crest, so it's mushed and also a mountain, right? But one of the things I love about our brand team, our internal Rapids team, is something even that we talk about and provide critique to the people that we're working with from the visual standpoint. What they really dialed in on are the different components. When you talk about the Easter eggs, I don't know if there's going to be Easter eggs in this because we have not started building it, but making sure that every part of this crest, every part of it, from the shape to what's included, has a story that connects back to this brand and to this region. And that is incredibly, every choice is going to be very intentional. And that's where I think Seattle did a great job with rolling out their brand, is that every little component of it and all of the secondary marks and the orca with the soccer ball, there's purposes and meanings for all of that. And our team is going to take a very intentional approach, making sure that it is very Colorado and very Rapid and tied back to our honored history. And that's something that came through loud and clear from the fan research, as well as that just because we're doing this doesn't mean we're abandoning the former brand. That's absolutely not what we're doing. Hence the burgundy, hence the name not changing. But there are other elements of this that we want to make sure that we honor as a part of the earned history and earned honors of this brand. And that is something that the main sticker for me is that we're not abandoning who we are. We're just reimagining how we portray it visually. So making sure that you're including different components of the historical elements of this brand are really important.
Well said. What do I want to touch on next? What was the initial pitch meeting like for the Release the Rush thing that we've seen the first two home games?
What do you mean the pitch?
The Release the Rush with the blast of water up above the South Bank.
When you say pitch, do you mean like the team asking if we could do it?
Yes, as opposed to the field.
Got
yes.
It was basically what we talked about earlier. They said, hey, Haley, when we dial in the fan surveys, there is a lack of energy and a large lack of energy in the beginning of the game, the lead up to kickoff, and also halftime. And I said, okay, so let's go put together plans to make it more engaging. And it was really Katie Brown and Kim on our team who led that effort to really reimagine what that experience was like. And so they thought through some funky stuff. We thought, hey, we're the Rapids. We're one of the only teams without water feature, and that's silly because we're the Rapids, and even RSL has a water feature in one of their premium clubs. Like, let's go do something weird and different and fun. And it led to a water cannon. And you know what? Whatever. We're gonna try it. We're gonna try some weird things. I told you in the beginning of this journey, like, it's gonna get weird, and it did. And it's fun. It's tiny. It's cute. It's gonna be way better in hot weather than it is in cold weather, and that's the learning that we're getting right now and feedback from fans. But that was kind of how that was relayed.
You come out with the Reimagine of the Crest, and you kind of talked about how the timeline for that could potentially be up in the air, and you're not changing the name or the colors and everything. And I'm going to assume whatever kit you guys are launching for the 2027 shortened season, that's already been finalized, and maybe there's at least initial iterations for what's going to be 27, 28. You tell me, how much does the reimagining of the Crest and launching that potentially impact kit designs or other stuff that's already in the works, or that maybe you're doing to have a line while maybe those two things are being developed concurrently?
Yeah, so that's actually part of the conversation with Adidas right now. So there's lots of discussion on what the kits will or could look like from an MLS standpoint for the shortened sprint season. The 27-28 season, there'll be a new secondary kit. That one's kind of almost done. So when we talk about introducing new kits, like from a color standpoint and all of those things, likely you're looking at 28, 29. But again, that all could change based on Adidas bandwidth. They're a global consumer retailer, and MLS is only one of their many business lines. Mm-hmm. So that could change. That could move up. Hopefully not move back, because that would be the timeline for like a two-way runway, but could move back.
You spoke about what some of the other fan experience stuff looks like for the rest of the season, and maybe stuff that's going to be early, checked off the list for 2027. I mean, bigger picture, what else are you seeing? At the risk of just asking you, Haley, give me an update on the scoreboard that you don't have, is there anything else that you're looking at that's beyond 27?
I can give you an update on scoreboard. I'm working on it. That's my update.
Okay.
But there are meetings that are happening actively, and not just from, and Kevin mentioned this, but not just from a Rapid solo perspective, but a KFC-wide conversation around this, which makes me excited. So we're working on that, actively working on that. Kevin's actively pushing there, which is nice to stay and see too. So that's kind of the update on the scoreboard. But when we talk about the larger picture, there's going to be, even after World Cup break, we're targeting July 22nd for the release, but there's going to be one of our premium areas that's existed for a while that's going to look a lot different, and that's on the main concourse. So that's targeted. It was supposed to be done for our home opener. Obviously, that didn't happen, and more so due to tariffs and shipping and things of that nature. So there will be other adjustments to the stadium as it relates to other spaces in the future. That's definitely on the docket. And I think one of the things that I think a lot about, and we're going to work through this from a brand standpoint, is the atmosphere and creating a destination atmosphere. And what does that mean? I don't know. Whatever is important to the fans. But making sure that it feels more homey when you're coming and meeting into the stadium as well as in the stadium. And there's a lot of teams. I love Orlando. I think they do a great job. I think SKC, I went there a few weeks ago and I was floored. I never wanted to leave. They do an excellent job from an in-stadium atmosphere. Like, you feel like you're somewhere. It doesn't necessarily mean a bunch more murals, which I love all the murals that we do, but, like, having intentionality to how we show up from a brand standpoint, like, that's going to be something that we're really focused on in the future, too.
In your first full season, first full calendar year with the club, what's the biggest thing that you feel more prepared for or just better about either you individually or the team that you oversee?
Let's talk about the team I oversee. I feel really confident that they are bought in. So one of the things that we talked about a lot when I first got here was that there'd been this like mentality that the Rapids were forgotten and that they were the redhead stepchild. And yes, correct, that is right. But that's not really the case anymore. And it is very much like a what have you done for me lately culture, but not in terms of the staff. Like, the staff is wonderful, but that feeling of like, okay, you can say all these things, but like, what have you done lately, right? And there's been a lot of investment in the staff and empowerment of the staff and transparency. Honestly, like, one of the things that Kevin's appointment did is it created a direct line across all of the different business units in KSE, and it gave the Rapids the power to have visibility into the full financial picture of operations, which didn't exist before. So making sure that all of the teams are aligned and what the priorities for the brand are and what we're working towards as a collective leadership team gives people confidence to actually go execute, which is going to make us better. It's going to make us better operationally, but it's going to make us better for the fans because we're aligned in terms of what the heck the goals are. So I feel really confident in how prepared they are. Personally, I feel more confident in understanding what leadership and ownership needs to see, both from a pitch standpoint, but also a result standpoint to feel comfortable to invest. Like, that's been the biggest learning for me is I've worked for different teams that have ownership with only one team interest, and it's different for me. That was the biggest probably learning outside of obviously working for a soccer team and not having worked for a soccer team before. That piece was the biggest learning curve, and I feel more confident in understanding what they need to see and the timelines that they need to see and the returns they need to see and how it's articulated, and that makes me feel more confident in the future of this club.
While we're content farming, Hallie, can you confirm that Matt Wells' dog will be at Bark at the Park?
I can't confirm, but I'm sure he wants to bring him. I'm sure. I can make that ask.
Okay. Yes, I'll say I could bring it up to him. Maybe not. Saturday was not the time for me to ask that question necessarily.
Yeah.
Well, I'm asking Hallie, Seattle Mariners versus Colorado Rockies. In your heart of hearts, who are you rooting for?
Colorado Rockies.
Okay.
Root for the home team. I mean, I love the M. I do love them. They're an underdog story. Who doesn't want that? But I don't know. I go back and forth. I was actually at home opener for the Rockies, cheering for Philly, so that's problematic. But we'll figure that out. I was born in Philly, so there's a little bit of that. I don't know. I think you have to go root for the home team. But I do have a sweet spot for the Mariners. Definitely not the Yankees, though. Not them. Love the people. Can't love the team.
Respect that. Hallie, I know we've only got a minute. I want to respect that time. I'm going to assume Gabby's not going to give me 12 minutes of stoppage time. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you wanted to cover or that you feel that I've missed or that would just be useful?
I actually do think one more thing that we didn't cover, and this is my B. You kind of brought up some of this, but I think one of the most important parts of this brand reimagination, and it's something that the fans said a lot, is that they don't want this to just be a marketing ploy.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. Correct. Yes. It needs to come alongside of a visible change in how the club operates and is invested in the Rapids, for it to really mean something. And so that's something that I've been thinking a lot about. And when we were toggling back and forth, do we do this? Do we not do this? That's something that I brought to executive leadership, is that I didn't feel comfortable. We didn't feel comfortable as a team collectively moving forward unless there was going to be change in how we operate. And that was greenlit from a leadership ownership perspective. So that, I think that's really important for listeners and fans to understand, is that we're equally fighting for all the things that the fans want, because we want those too. We want the new toys. The new toys make it more fun to do our job. And so that everything as it relates to our brand reimagination is framed in that perspective.
Haley, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to the announcement on Tuesday, and I'll see you in the press box on Saturday.
Heck yeah. All right. See you soon.